Hey, lovelies. This is Janelle, the relationship coach behind the Successful Invisible, and I'm here with another episode of Ish I Saw on TikTok. So, today we're going to talk about the absolute lie when people say boys are easier to raise. Boys aren't easier to raise. Parents just stop parenting. Y'all have all heard this. You've heard somebody say boys are easier to raise. But the truth is, boys have just been and are usually given less guidance, fewer rules, more grace, and more excuses, and way more room to be emotionally neglected. Meanwhile, little girls are being trained for adulthood by like age 5. And then we all act surprised when those same boys grow up into men who can't communicate, can't self regulate, and can't show up in relationships, can't hold down jobs, and lack life skills. Okay? This conversation isn't about blaming parents. Well, a little bit it is. It's about connecting the dots because how boys are or aren't raised shows up loud and clear in the dating pool. And as we know, it got pee in it.
Okay, I'm gonna just say I wish y'all stop saying boys are easier to raise than girls. No, the fuck they're not. Both of them are difficult. The reason why y'all find it to be difficult is because you actually raise your daughters to be actual competent human beings. You raise them to be competent adults. You don't do that to your son. You actually emotionally neglect your child. That boy, you just let that boy do anything, emotionally neglect him. You don't actually raise him to be a competent and self-sufficient adult. That's why you think they're easier. Because you let that boy run off and do everything he want to do while your daughter is on the lock and key. You got that girl fucking 5 years old, already have all these chores, while your son is 10 and he only had to take out the trash. He don't know how to wash himself, he don't know how to cook, he don't know how to clean, he don't know how to do none of that shit. That's why you think the boys are easier, because you just let them do anything. Actually raise your sons. Be in their lives. Stop just letting them wander off and do any fucking thing. This is why we have terrible men that don't know how to take care of themselves.
Stop telling people that little boys are easier to raise. Because they're not easier to raise. I guess they would be if you ain't fucking raising them. That's how y'all be. Y'all don't really be raising y'all fucking sons. Y'all throw them little dudes to the wolves. Then you sit around and hold your daughter to the same standard as a full-grown adult. She gotta take care of you, him, everybody, the household and everything. The girl is only fucking 5. You not worried about what your son doing ever. This dude out there running the streets and all this stupid stuff, but you on your little girl, you on your daughter like a hawk. What you doing? You ain't wearing that. You ain't going nowhere. Oh, he can go out cause he's a boy. He's a boy. He'll be alright. As if boys don't get assaulted and all kinds of stuff too. And for the women who say that they can't raise a boy to be a man, the boy gonna turn into a man regardless. It's up to you. Cause you the parent who stayed. It's up to you to make sure he's a good man. Or at least instill all the morals and everything that he needs to succeed. Because he's gonna make his own choices. But it starts with you. You need to get that shit in check, baby. They're not easier to raise. You're just not raising them.
Is that it's easier to have a son. Because I know exactly what it is that you're implying. You're implying by having a son, I don't have to parent as hard.
Parents that think it's easier to have a boy truly are trashy parents because you are implying that your son will inherently need less attention, need less love, need less stimulation because they are a boy. Trashy parenting. My mom raised 2 boys that were not her own, raised 2 boys that were her own, and she always said that boys are hard to raise. And parents are gonna say, maybe your mom didn't know what she was doing, this and that. No, because my mom will say that it's easy to be a parent. All you gotta do is have a kid. It's hard to be a good parent to any child because it means you have to actively learn, respond, sacrifice, enrich, teach, and learn alongside with your child. And many parents aren't willing to do that. My mom told us how we treat women, how we're supposed to show affection to one another, what a good touch and a bad touch is, what our address is, how to effectively communicate our wants and needs through speech pathology, how to work on life skills with us with occupational therapy, how to help us with homework because of specialized academic instruction. My dad was like, yo, my parents did their part. Having a boy is not easy. I hate when parents say, just because you have a boy, you probably had it easy. Imagine having a girl. Many of these fathers need to do better too, because a lot of these boys need a male figure to show them what it means to treat a woman right, what it means to follow the rules, what it means to be a provider, what it means to be resilient, what it means to be affectionate and kind. And many parents don't do that because boys will be boys. Boys will be boys if you allow them to be those type of boys. But my mom would say, I'm not raising boys to be boys, I'm raising my boys to be men. Some of you parents, if you think having a boy is easier than raising a girl, you shouldn't be having children. Honestly, like, be so for real.
People who say that boys are easier to raise than girls are really saying that boys are easier because I can neglect them and girls are harder because I have to police them.
One of the biggest lies ever that I'm real tired of hearing is that it's easier to raise little boys than it is to raise little girls. And as somebody with a son and a daughter, I'm telling y'all right now, that is bullshit. And y'all need to stop saying that. The reason why y'all be having people who don't even have kids, y'all be having them thinking that it's easier to raise a little boy because y'all don't raise little boys. Y'all just watch them. Y'all don't teach them shit except for how to not be a girl. Y'all don't have no rules or no expectations for them at all. The only rules and expectations y'all be having is for y'all little girls. From the moment they infants and toddlers, you teaching them how to be a grown-ass woman. You teaching them what they can and can't say, how they should sit, how they should dress, how they should act. You teaching them essential skills they gonna need to be a grown adult woman. But y'all don't do that with y'all boys. That's why you think it's so easy. And I will say, I actually don't have no kids. I don't have a son or a daughter right now. I just didn't think people would watch the first part of this video unless I said that. But I am a teacher. Well, I was a teacher. And I know it's common knowledge that a female brain develops, I think, faster or earlier than a male brain. I'm not a scientist or a doctor or like an expert by any means, but I will go out on a limb and say, I'm pretty sure that has something to do with culture. I don't know though.
Are boys easier to raise than girls? Well, the majority of people seem to think so. One of the main reasons that people give is that they believe boys are less emotional and therefore less complicated than girls, especially during the teenage years. Now, there's a lot that could be unpacked here. As someone who has a PhD researching the social and emotional development of boys and men, one of the things I find fascinating is that believing that boys are easier because they're less emotionally complicated actually goes hand in hand with one of the biggest fears that parents of boys have about their sons. Let me show you what I mean.
Maxwell is this sweet little love bug, very tender, very sensitive. It is so beautiful, and we don't want him to lose it, because that was one thing that I did know, that can happen to boys.
So she's right. There's tons of research that indicates that many boys do suppress their emotional sensitivity as they grow up. Around the ages of 5 and 14 are two critical time periods when this occurs. And just like in that clip, research has found many parents, not just mothers, are deeply concerned about this happening to their sons. But what if what we experience as easier parenting of teenage boys is actually connected to their emotional suppression? In fact, what if the belief that boys are emotionally uncomplicated actually enforces their emotional suppression? The number one reason that teenage boys in my PhD research stopped talking about their feelings with their parents was because they didn't want to burden them with their emotions or with what was really going on in their lives. Many of them believed that being a man was to be the shoulder to cry on, not the other way around. Which on one level is super commendable because they really cared for the people in their lives, but is also concerning because they felt that they had to suppress themselves in order to do that, which led many of them feeling greater sense of loneliness. This is why us as parents doing our own inner work is so crucial. Can we sit with the emotional honesty of our children without getting dysregulated by it, or without our children feeling like they're burdening us by telling us what's going on? Resiliency is fostered through guidance and connection. So do boys need less emotional support during their teenage years than girls? Or do so many people seem to think that only because it's more hidden, and then assume, teenage boys are less complicated, they're not saying much, I guess they're fine. What do you think?
Have you ever heard it said that boys are easier to raise than girls? I know you've heard it because according to this Gallup poll, by 2-to-1 Americans say that boys are easier to raise than girls. So I want to share a theory I have about this. I don't actually think that boys are easier to raise than girls. I think society has conditioned them to believe that you don't have to parent your boys. Now I'm going to share a few examples to illustrate my point. One example. We are members of our neighborhood pool, and for the most part, the girls are really well behaved and the boys are running wild. Now, I don't think this is because girls are less apt to go crazy. I think it's because the boys aren't being parented. For example, there are these 3 boys that show up at the pool, and when they show up at the pool, everyone knows that things about to get crazy, that they're about to throw pool furniture in the pool, that they're going to get splashed and have stuff thrown at them. They are incredibly inconsiderate, and never do the parents intervene or parent them or tell them to do better. In fact, what often happens is the boys that were well behaved before these 3 boys showed up, they get looped into this crazy shenanigans, and it's suddenly cool to be inconsiderate and to throw pool furniture and to splash people and, do all that stuff. And as I said, no one ever corrects them. They're just allowed to run amok. It's almost like being inconsiderate is cool. Now, when girls do something that is a little bit wild, for example, there's these girls that were throwing their Barbie doll into the pool and diving for it, and they accidentally threw it too far and it actually hit us. Immediately, the parents came over and apologized to us. They told the girls to be more careful, and the girls apologized to us. I can't even begin to tell you the number of times I've been hit by one of the boys' toys. But as I said, nothing happens because boys will be boys, and parents let boys be crazy because societally that's what we've been raised to expect. Something particularly interesting is there's still boys that resist this. They're well behaved, they're still considerate, and we see those other boys, the inconsiderate ones, almost make fun of them. They get called names like sissy. Apparently there's this idea in society is that the less considerate you are, the more masculine you are. I will say that my husband, he said this is what it was like growing up for him, that the boys who were cool and tough and seen as really masculine were the ones that really didn't consider the needs of others. And if you were soft-spoken or kind or considered the needs of others, you were called a sissy. All of this to say, I think our society is really missing out on parenting our boys. I think we can see the ill effects of boys not being parented today, and I really wish that consideration was one of the values we saw in masculinity.
It is not easier to raise boys than it is to raise girls. I've said this before and I'll say it again. A lot of times with parenting, specifically with parenting boys, a lot of parents will emotionally neglect raising their sons. Parents tend to hyper focus on their daughters and be involved in their daughter's business, but allow their sons to roam freely without much guidance. Boys and girls need the same type of parenting. The same systems that are put in place when you're raising a daughter should be the same systems that you put in place when raising a son. If you expect your daughter to be a high achiever, to make good grades, you should have those same expectations for your sons. Just because they're boys does not mean that they are not able to be high achievers in school. If your daughter has a curfew, your son should have a curfew. If your daughter is not allowed to bring certain people over, your son should not be allowed to bring people over. If you are all in your daughter's business, you should be all in your son's business. The same questions that you ask your daughter are the same questions you ask your son. The same expectations that you have of your daughters are the same expectations you should have of your sons. In fact, it's actually harder to raise boys than it is girls, because these boys are supposed to grow up and be the future leaders. They're supposed to grow up and be the future protectors. They're supposed to grow up and be someone's father one day, be someone's husband one day. How are they going to know how to do that if they are left to their own devices and neglected? They are not going to just magically wake up and as a man and know what to do if they have not been poured into and taught. The same way you pour into your daughters are the same ways that you are supposed to pour into your sons. And if you say it's easier to raise boys than it is girls, you're just not parenting, or you're not parenting properly. Because there's no way y'all thought that it was easier to raise boys than it is girls, because it absolutely is not. There is so much that's involved with raising a boy, especially as a mom. Like, there's so much you have to think about, because one day he's going to be a man. He's going to be a dad, maybe. He's going to be a husband, maybe. He's supposed to grow up and be a leader. He's supposed to grow up and take initiative and be accountable and do good things. How do you expect for him to do that if you just leaving him to his own devices? If you're not requiring him to make good grades in school, if you're not requiring him to learn life skills and how to clean up and how to cook and how to take care of himself and take care of his hygiene, like, where y'all got this from? Because there's just no way.
People always say I'm lucky because I got boys. Having boys is so much easier. Having boys is so much easier. You don't have to worry about the attitudes. You don't have to worry about them getting someone pregnant. Just a whole bunch of ignorant stuff that they say when it comes to involving girls. But let me explain to you the downside of having boys. That's 4 people I have to teach to be emotionally mature. That's 4 people I have to teach how to be nurturing. That's 4 people I have to keep alive on a daily basis and keep them from unaliving each other or themselves, because we all know boys are a hell of a lot rougher. That's 4 people I have to make sure don't end up in jail. That's 4 people I have to make sure don't become little YNs. That's 4 people I have to make sure that they are aware of the system, how it works, and how to navigate with it, because it was never designed for them to win. It's not like they're a black woman who can just have a baby and then go and get government assistance. And because you guys know we have it a little bit easier, or a little bit differently easier. It may not be the easiest, but as women, especially black women, we are outdoing our men by 100 folds. That's 4 people I have to make sure don't make nobody a teen parent or a single mom. Oh, and yeah, the thing about girls is that a girl can bring home maybe 1 to maybe 2 babies home at a time statistically. She only can get pregnant once a year. Boys can get however many people pregnant a year. That's something I have to make sure doesn't happen. These are 4 people I have to mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and socially educate before they even get to turn 15, because if they do something wrong in this world, they're going to treat them like grown men. And I don't know if you see the way the world is going with our men right now, but it's gone to shit, and I have to do a completely better job. I have to do a job that the women before us and the men before us couldn't even get right. Yes, baby, that's a flower. It's a pretty flower. Say it again. Say hi.
Hi.
That's one of my babies. He wanted to say hi to y'all. When it ain't nothing on the internet that they are showing our boys to look up to other than a DDG, a NBA young boy, a little baby, a Diddy, a this, a that, like, how? That's 4 people that I have to teach the value of marriage, even though they have never seen me or their father be married. If you ask me, I think the girls got a better chance in today's society than the boys do. Because if you see the way that the numbers are working right now, we're outdoing our men already as it is. When it comes to education, when it comes to finances, when it comes to mental health, we are outdoing our boys. We are outdoing our men. And this whole, oh, well, boys can be a princess too, and this whole gay epidemic. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with gay people. I'm just saying everybody is gay. Who is going to be the boys? Who is going to be the boys? Like, I got to fight against shit like that. That's not to say I have a problem with how you live your life. If you're a gay man, you decide. That just can't be my boys. That cannot. It cannot. Who the fuck is going to be the boys? If everybody wants soft girl treatment, if everybody want to go 50-50, who going to be the men? I need my boys to turn out as men, not no fucking fairies. That's not what I want. My 12-year-old son, sent me a little picture of him and his girlfriend. Real cute and whatnot, until I seen the picture of him and his girlfriend giving each other a kiss. Now, this is a conversation that a boy's father is supposed to be having with him. But he not here. So I gotta do it. And I'm trying to explain to my son on a certain level, but I'm not even sure if he's hearing me as a woman, that, hey, dude, like, slow down, chill out, because kissing leads to touching leads to other things, and you, in no way, form, or fashion, are you ready to be a father. In no way, form, or fashion, are you ready to be a provider. In no way, form, or fashion, are you even emotionally mature enough to handle a full-blown relationship. I'm almost 30 years old, and I can say it's men my age that don't even know how to handle that shit. But he looks at me and he's like, well, Ma, you had me at 14, 13. Precisely why I'm telling you this shit. And where the fuck is your daddy? My point exactly. Even though that wouldn't be the case. My son would be dead before he'd be a deadbeat. But the whole innuendo that girls are easier than boys, bullshit. Bullshit. There's so many things as a woman that we think that we get to look over because, oh, well, you know, boys will be boys. But no, I'm trying to raise my son into respectful, decent, providing, productive citizens of society, potential husbands and fathers. And that's not easy. That's not easy.
Let's jump into my favorite part of all of the content I post on YouTube. And that's just my thoughts, where I get to kind of express what I feel about whatever we have read or gone over. So let's get into it. All right, so let's jump into this topic that we often kind of hear circulated through social media every few years. You know, we hear about it and then it kind of ebbs and it flows. But with the recent, I would say, spate of unalivings and the harmful things that have happened where adult sons have harmed or unalived their parents, it's ridiculous. And I felt it was a very poignant time to bring this up, a very appropriate time to bring this up, where we need to circle back this conversation. Part of the root of it is people believing that boys are easier to raise, you know, and there's a lot of points to that are completely wrong. And I just want to pull out a few that I've noticed just in my own lived experience, as well as working with clients, that I really want to highlight through the TikToks that I stitch. So here are my 5 main points and just some ideas that I want you all to think about. So point number 1, easier boys equal parents stop parenting them. Many parents think boys are easier because they're less emotional or less demanding, but that's not really the truth. They aren't given the same structure, expectations, or emotional vocabulary that their sisters are given or that girl children are given and taught from an early age. And their socialization of boys is very different of socialization of girls, especially when it comes to matters of, you know, household, grooming, etc., expectations in school. Some coaching insights from this are behavior patterns. Boys given fewer chores, less discipline, and looser expectations often appear easier simply because they've never been held accountable. It's a parental double standard. A daughter's every emotion and choice gets parsed and coached. A son's behavior is often left to figure it out alone, and that's given the title of, oh, it's easier. A coaching tip that I really want to relay here is evaluate how rules are applied equally or not across your children. If one child gets structure and the other gets none, behaviors will diverge because of expectations, not temperament. And this is for if you have children of your own, or if you don't have children, but you're dating someone with children. You really need to be cognizant of this, because there's a lot of young boys that are being allowed to turn into monsters as grown men because they never received the type of structure, accountability, and expectations that were necessary for them to grow and to develop into fruitful individuals and healthy adults. So TikToks and parenting trends and threads will a lot of times say stuff like boys will be boys, and they normalize inconsiderate behavior without consequence. Anything from unruly pool behavior to ignoring responsibilities to bullying their sisters to bullying girls in their class. Like, these things are often dismissed as boys will be boys. And that's how you come to a lot of times boys who turn into men who have little regard or no regard for women, and they feel that disrespecting women is just part of what they should be able to do, entitled to do, because it was normalized in their upbringing. So boys aren't easier. It's just that parents stop parenting them. Point number 2, boys are less visible emotionally. They're not less emotional. The belief that boys are low maintenance is often rooted in social conditioning. Boys are taught to suppress emotions other than anger, which is not emotional simplicity. It's emotional suppression. And that's why you have these grown ass men out here who don't know how to regulate their own emotions. They never were allowed to express them in a healthy way growing up, so therefore they don't know how to identify them, become self-aware, self-soothe, reroute, etc. This is not an excuse. If you're a grown man and you're unruly and you spaz out and crash out, you need to suffer the consequences of that, because that's not acceptable. But it helps understand the reason and identify behaviors early. So some coaching insights on this one is silent suffering. Boys may seem calm, but research and real testimonials show many boys avoid vulnerability because they think it's unmanly. Also, they're afraid of getting teased by their peers or bullied by a brother, a parent, etc. It's a conflict avoidance strategy. Instead of processing sadness, fear, or self-doubt, boys learn to mask it. That emotional flattening is learned, not innate, unless somebody's a sociopath, honestly. And then a coaching tip that I really want to give to you guys is name emotions in everyday moments. If you are around any young boys that you have influence over, you volunteer, you have children, nieces and nephews, whatever, teach boys emotional literacy, labeling feelings rather than bottling them to prevent later relational breakdowns. And it also helps them learn how, like anything, they're building a muscle to learn how to effectively manage their emotions. So a celebrity example here is like public figures like Chris Evans have spoken about the pressures men face to hide vulnerability, a trend covered widely in media as part of the modern masculinity evolution conversation. And I definitely need to talk about that in a different video, but I think that is such an important thing to see, is grown men talking about their experience of kind of how the way they were raised and allowed to relate growing up. All right, so point number 3 from this video is, little boys left to wander become little men who do not know how to relate. When parents fail to guide boys in life skills, household tasks, self-care, respect for boundaries, they grow up adult boys, not emotionally competent men. And the dating cesspool disaster going on right now in modern dating is a testament to that. These are a lot of adult boys. Parents didn't pour into them, guardians, whomever the adults were in these grown men's lives didn't pour into them. So these adult boys are emotionally stunted. They're developmentally delayed, not in the sense of like a therapist diagnosed it, like they have not developed in many areas, and they also don't know how to process emotion in a healthy way, once again, and it leads to a lot of this violence and vitriol against women. Add on to that the red pill bullshit that's out there. So there's a lot of layers to it. So some coaching insights here are day-to-day skills matter: hygiene, household participation, accountability, conflict resolution. Girls are often asked to learn these. Boys are often left to figure it out. And that is why you have grown men who don't have good hygiene practices at a far higher rate than you see young girls, because young girls are socialized in for better or for worse, beat into submission to adhere to societal expectations of them. And a lot of that is learning how to cook, learning how to clean, learning how to take care of oneself, learning how to take care of kids, depending on your family, etc. The relationship impact of this is of men, little boys who turn into little men who can't relate, is that a man who never learned basic life skills will struggle to co-create with a partner because he never learned cooperation. He's seeking a mommy he can sleep with, and he is going to have a very unhealthy view of what his partner should be, quote unquote, bringing to the table or providing him. It's going to look much more like care than it should. So coaching tip for clients here is assess how a man manages responsibility, self-care, and communication. If he never learned them as a child, he may still be carrying boy habits as an adult. So Viral adulting fails compilations and memes on TikTok and other social media platforms about men not knowing how to do laundry or cook are less about humor and more about social commentary on neglecting basic development. And it's not cute, and it stretches across all socioeconomic statuses and all races, etc. It is not cute. So if you have a son or you know somebody who's raising a son, tell them to get to it and actually pour into their son so they can be a healthy, self-sufficient adult, but also so they can be a viable option for a partner that somebody would actually want because they have all those skills together. Point number 4. Boys are easier to ignore, not easier to parent. When parents assume a boy will figure it out, they unintentionally communicate that his behaviors, emotions, and growth don't matter as much. That's emotional neglect, and it shows up later in relationships as instability or avoidance. Some coaching insights here are parenting priorities. We police girls constantly. Safety, behavior, dress, social interactions, but let boys roam and the message is clear. Your behavior doesn't need shaping. And also, policing is the right word, even to where young girls are bullied by older women and women jealous of them if that young girl goes into puberty earlier or if she is of a higher weight than they think she should be. You know what I'm saying? And with that prodding and bullying goes on a lot more with girls than boys. Not saying it doesn't happen to boys sometimes if they're born into certain environments or families where, male and macho-ness is always tested, but girls are policed just as a general rule of thumb by everybody. And behavioral consequences. As adults, men raised this way may expect women to do the emotional labor for them. And we hear complaints about that all the time on social media. So here's a coaching tip. Pay attention to how a man talks about his upbringing. If he describes freedom without emotional intelligence, that freedom often became emotional dependency or avoidance. So in media where we see this is there are news stories and interviews, showing actors or athletes revealing they never learned emotional management as boys and it caused relationship pain later. A common theme in male celebrity interviews about emotional growth, I think we've seen this with Denzel Washington, Michael B. Jordan, discussing his emotional vulnerability and growth publicly, etc. And even Will Smith has talked about this. Now I know him and Jada have a very special set of circumstances, but in general, a lot of men didn't really learn a lot of these skills until they became an adult, especially these soft skills. And then point number 5, raising boys requires intentional, not default parenting. Saying boys are easier is often a cover story for I didn't parent him the same way I parented her. Teaching boys how to manage emotions, relationships, and responsibilities on purpose creates adults who are capable, present, and relationally healthy. So some coaching insights here are routine and discipline. Boys thrive with structure just as much as girls, probably even more so. Chores, curfews, emotional check-ins, and clear expectations. Healthy masculinity, teaching boys how to express kindness, respect, care, and accountability dismantles the toxic narrative that emotionality is feminine. A coaching tip here is look for a partner who learned emotional regulation and practical life skills. These are tangible markers of quality parenting and relational readiness. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that children of both genders benefit from emotional coaching. Dismissing boys' emotional education leads to long-term social isolation and relational difficulty, which helps explain higher rates of male loneliness and emotional suppression in adulthood. So let me know your thoughts about this. I know we've all heard this, somebody say, it could be even our own parents who said, boys are easy to raise, and the boy is now an adult boy, and they have no clue how to really thrive in life. So let me know your thoughts about this below, and if you have seen it, how you can be a part of positive impact to change it. And this is why dating feels the way it does right now. You are not too much. You're just running into men who were never taught how to be enough. And that's where these men come off with, oh, she's being masculine. No, women were raised, especially black women, were raised to be excellent, whether it was a healthy environment or an abusive environment. Excellence was expected. So where boys in a lot of cases now who are men, that was not the case. So these are a lot of adult boys or unhealed boys who have grown into men who don't magically become emotionally available. They become adults who expect women to finish the job their parents didn't do. These are men who also won't take accountability for their own growth and development. The red flags you're seeing in dating didn't start in adulthood. They started in childhood with low expectations, emotional neglect, and zero accountability by the parents, and putting zero accountability on the sons. Once you set that, you stop personalizing bad, like behavior, and start choosing yourself faster. If you're ready to sharpen your discernment, stop over functioning in relationships, and learn how to screen men without guilt or confusion, come join my exclusive coaching community on Coffee. Inside, we break these patterns down in real time, connect the psychological dots, and give you practical tools to date with clarity, confidence, and self-respect. Join us on Coffee and date smarter, not harder.